Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello everyone, my name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling Podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Kay Miller. She's the author of Uncopyable Sales Secrets. So don't take notes. It's useless. It ain't gonna work. She knows hypnosis. Don't look into her eyes. Kay, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Even though I failed your first test.
Yeah, let's ask the listeners. Put it in the comments. There's a gaggle of geese. What do you call a group of crows? I know checking on Google first. It's kind of weird, but it's Edgar Allan Poe. I'm a Baltimore.
Oh, that's a good clue too. You gave me a clue and I still didn't get it. And I knew it, but hey.
You know what's kind of interesting is, I lived in Baltimore for a long time, and Edgar Allan Poe is from there. And on his birthday, somebody would bring a bottle of brandy to his grave, and no one knew who did it for like decades. And then it stopped, and we all assumed that person passed away and they couldn't do it anymore. But it was pretty amazing that somebody
it is amazing.
Had dedication to, because Edgar Allan Poe, changed the world.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to do, right?
Brilliant. So, sales has been going on since the dawn of time. I could see cave people having kids, and this little miniature kid who's about 4 years old trying to figure out, do I go to mom or dad to get this brontosaurus steak that I want? And the kids figured out, go to mom for this one and ask mom in this way. And we were such great salespeople when we were young. And then when we get a little older, we're self-conscious. It's like, I don't want to pick up a call. So why do you think we go from being fearless as kids to fearful as teenagers and then adults?
Well, that's a good question, because another thing, in looking a little more modern times, a lot of us were entrepreneurs as a kid. I sold all kinds of things. My most successful venture was K's Candy. And I love alliteration. So I spelled everything with K, but I sold candles and just crafts and anything.
Kangaroos. Anything with a K, you were there.
Yes. Right. And so, I don't know. It's like that kid enthusiasm, like you said, that, and when you're selling as a kid, it's a great way to make money, which was my number one goal. But when we sold candy, we went back in those days, they had penny candy at the store.
Oh, yeah.
And there were kids in the neighborhood who couldn't go to the store because they were too little. So my friend and I would just mark it up to 2 cents. And we made a killing with a K, which is another clue for the crow.
Yes. So it's kind of amazing that Kate, don't let your husband know, but I'm about to tell you a dirty word.
Okay. I won't tell him.
Selling and salespeople, which is not true. But in our society, I can have 100 salespeople in a room, and I'll say, please finish this sentence for me. And I go, salespeople are, and someone puts up their hand and goes, driven. On one flip chart, I write in green pen, driven. And then someone else says, motivated and successful and da-da-da. And then someone says, are untrustworthy. I write on a different flip chart in a red pen, out to get you. They're liars. And these are a group of salespeople that after a while, the list of negatives is 3 times longer than the green list of positives. And then somebody eventually says, wait a minute. That's not us. That's not what I do. I actually go out there and I help my customers do X, Y, Z. But even in their heads, society has embedded the thought that sales is bad. And even salespeople, when they go to a store and someone says, how can I help you? No, just looking. So your thoughts on that? Because we'll go into the book and those uncopyable secrets, but that's the underlying ground that we work on, right?
Well, I think, at one time, sales was kind of sleazy. You talk about the used car salesman, or
I think certain aspects of it was sleazy and probably still are, but most of it was like,
But
no.
most of it is not. Most of it is not. And I, like you, I define sales as, really taking the time to find out what somebody wants, what problem they have, their aspiration, and then meeting that. It's so much more fun. It's so much more profitable. And yet we can, most of us can remember even recent examples of someone who sold us in a way that we didn't feel comfortable. It's the old golden rule, treat someone like you'd like to be treated. I have a story in the book where someone came and sold power washing to a friend of mine.
Mhm.
And he brought out this huge 3-ring notebook and just went page through by page and just talked and talked, and I don't.
You down, baby. You're gonna say yes.
Oh my gosh, her eyes were glazing over, she's fidgeting. And, for that, I don't think he had a nefarious intent, but
No, it's just
sometimes
poor
as salespeople,
yeah.
we just get too wrapped up in what we're so excited about. So on the other end of that sales conversation is someone going, ugh, so I think sales has really changed and developed. So we kind of remember that old sales style. And then we also remember our own personal, if you ever sat through a timeshare, presentation, not to pick on them, but, we've been in uncomfortable situations. So there are those, but like you said, the vast majority of salespeople have great intentions and want to help you get what you want.
Right. So just before we change topics a little bit, you could have someone saying, well, I'll tell you a story and then I'll put it in context. I was at a corporate event and they introduced this couple that help homeless high school students out. And this was their story, is that they were watching TV and there was some dude doing an event for the homeless. And he said, hey, if you want to help, call us and come to this event on Saturday. So they call up and say, we'd like to help. And he says, what would really help is if you could bring 500 bottles of water to this event and some cookies. And that's what they did. They get the Suburban, they pack up all their kids, they go to this event. And as they're parking, this homeless guy comes up to the window and taps on the window. And the mom's like, oh my God, I can't believe I brought my kids here in this place with all these homeless, dangerous scoundrels. And the husband rolls down the window and the homeless guy says, hey, mister, how can I help? And the mom's like, oh my God. Same way, they set up the water and they're giving water out and there's a kid not coming to their table. And so the husband goes over there and gives the kid a bottle of water and some cookies. The kid won't talk to him. And the husband goes, before the day's out, that kid's going to talk to me. And he asks another kid, what's going on with that kid over there? He says, he came out. He's only 14 years old and his father kicked him out of the house. So he's homeless right now. And so they decide rather than help all the homeless people, they're just going to help kids going to high school that are homeless. And there's 2,000 of them in Philadelphia.
Wow.
There's such a huge problem. And the reason I bring that up is these guys are doing amazing work, but had Scott, who runs this, and his name is Scotty Scott, which is like a weird name, but a brilliant guy. Had he been a bad salesperson, that program would not have gotten off the ground, even though it was a noble cause and a social good. If you had someone, I want to do that, but they can't sell that idea to get the business community to embrace it, it's not going to work. So sales is critical. Doesn't matter what you're selling, even if it's the most noble cause in the world. If you're a bad salesperson, those kids don't get help. So selling's important. So there's a million sales books out there. Why is your one relevant?
Well, I think one thing I want to point out is in that story is that it sounds like they had a preconceived notion when that one person came up to the window.
We all do.
And
you see homeless people and you ask people, what do you think? That they're dangerous? And they're not. They're human beings, but absolutely.
And so, sales to me also, that is relevant because it's all about connection. And, through this COVID time, we have, how many people are suffering with mental health because they are lacking in that connection. A true sales relationship is a connection. I was talking about somebody I know recently who is a great salesperson. He left the distributor he was working with, and there was a non-compete clause. But after that ran out, he took his clients with him, because your opportunity as a salesperson is to develop a true relationship and connection. And that's something that we all need, I think, more now than ever, with all, the digital communication and, the just the isolation of COVID. And even before COVID, we've kind of been pulling back from community, I think. So I think being the right kind of salesperson is really serving your customer in a lot of ways. And when you come in, like for B2B sales, which is what I was in, and when you come into the room or you call them and they say, hey, it's great to hear from you. There's no reason that you can't be the kind of person that they welcome a visit from or a talk with.
So how do you build that relationship up? Like, walk us through that, because it sounds simple, but even people in normal life outside of sales sometimes have difficulty forming those relationships. So walk us through that, how to build that kind of relationship.
Well, when in a sales relationship, I will start with the beginning, because you can see the picture of the moose, if you're watching, behind my desk. That is what we call your target market, your ideal customer. And if you want to know who your ideal prospect is, think about one of your customers that's your very favorite, that is fun to work with, that pays their bills, that that has, like you said, welcomes your call and you love to talk to them and you make money from them. That is your moose, the person that you want to focus on as a customer, person or company. And once you do that, then you can spend more resources and energy, time, and even money to really develop a great relationship. I even in the book, and I have a giveaway that you're going to offer your listeners that talks about how to get in the door. Because with somebody,
unless you get that done, doesn't matter what product you have and how great you are, if you don't get an at-bat, forget about it.
Exactly. So, first you have to get in the door and you have to do something different than everyone else. What makes you stand out from everybody else that's calling on that person? And one of the stories I share in the book is a friend of mine. She's actually my ski buddy, and she sells Valpak advertising campaigns.
Yep.
And there was a customer that she couldn't get into. He had great gatekeepers. She had made cold calls. She'd called, she'd emailed, no response. So she made a greeting card with his picture on it and sent it to him. And we were saying, okay, is he going to call you back now? Do you think? I bet he'll call you back. Oh, no, he called her. And so not only did she get in the door, but he's become a fantastic customer. He said, you proved that you're different from everyone else. So if you can find a way to walk your talk from the beginning, that is really gives you an advantage. Beyond that, I think the biggest thing is, listening, as listening and learning about the customer. A lot of us salespeople love to talk. I'm one of them. Listening and letting silence happen is a discipline. And really that is how you learn about the customer, so that you're not the guy with the big notebook flipping through all the advantages when all he cares about is 3. Yeah,
and I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's not about you anyway, it's about the customer. And in order to figure out what's going on for the customer, because all customers have a guard up, is the more trust you build with the customer, more those guards come down. And when you ask a question, the customer reveals more. And once you get like the real issue, then you can figure out whether you can solve it or not. If you don't do that, you get red herrings and you kind of solve something that doesn't need solving, or you do a laundry list of all the stuff that you do. So that relationship is critical. And you mentioned listening, and listening happens to be a skill that many people suck at. So how do you truly listen?
Well, I have some techniques in my book, and it is really, I know you're big on mindset, and this is really an inner discipline that you have to do. What's that?
A skill you have to develop.
Yes, a skill you have to develop. And so I think practice helps. One of the techniques I use is when someone is talking, resist the urge to think about what you're going to say next. Think of your follow-up question, because who doesn't want to talk if they have a business, say? If you ask them something, you can either answer or you can say, oh, well, what about that, was the most challenging? How did you start in business, for example? learning and then going further in the questioning, I think, people love to talk about their business and their situation, their problems. So it really is a discipline, and I'm not, on a podcast, of course, my job is to talk.
So, Kay, don't tell your significant other, but if you and I went on a date and I talked about myself for 20 minutes in a row about how fabulous I am, you'd go to the bathroom and sneak out of the back.
I'd probably open the window, even if it's a high window.
You're going to jump.
Crawl out.
But
get an Uber.
If I ask you questions about yourself, 20 minutes would go by. You'd go, oh my God, Umar is such a great conversationalist. And so the same thing is true with our clients, is when you go there and you have this is our company. We've been around for this long. We do this. Our customers love us. And it's not about us. It's about our client. And the more we can get them to open up, the better we know them and the better we connect. Somebody was telling me recently in a podcast interview, his boss would basically say, when they're ready to go in to do that meeting, hey, Doug, let's go make some friends. And he truly meant it. It wasn't, let's go sell them, let's go close them. His goal was, let's go make friends. And the byproduct oftentimes would be getting a deal, but that wasn't his intent. The intent was, I want to know them, I want to connect with them, I want to get to like them.
I love that. Let's go make some friends. One thing that I like to think about is that people never get bored when they're talking. You notice if somebody ever says, well, I got to get going, it's obvious. It's always when you start talking, not when they're talking.
Yes,
so
that is true.
And back to Dale Carnegie, I even quote Dale Carnegie in the book, a story about him where he sat with someone all evening long and listened to all of these details from this botanist. And at the end of the night, the gentleman said, oh, Dale Carnegie is such a great conversationalist.
Yep. What's kind of sad in the day and age that we live in, there's people that are older, like senior citizens, and sometimes they have nurses come to see them at home, and the nursing has nothing to do with their medical condition. When the nurse comes in and sits down and chats with them for 20, 30 minutes, they get more medicine from the conversation than they do from the actual drugs themselves. And I think everybody is longing to connect. So we go in and we get the appointment. How do we land an appointment? I know you've got a giveaway to show people how to do that, but let's give a sneak peek here. And dear listeners and viewers, we're going to put a link in the show notes so you can go get that, so you can be a master at that. But Kate, walk me through it. Let's say there's a company, I happen to be in Toronto right now, and downtown Toronto is a company called Rogers. It's a big, massive national company. And if I want to get in to see the VP of sales, how would you recommend I do that?
Well, if they are truly your moose and you know that you really could do some serious
We're in Canada. People love moose here.
Moose, that's right. I would send a moose. I would first of all learn about your contact person. And that should be pretty easy to do. Besides, between the company information, LinkedIn, check Facebook, find something, where they went to school, something about their family and a hobby. That would be great. And then one idea that I bet would really stand out and get you an appointment is what we call a shock and awe box.
Ooh,
so this goes by. Now we have our branding color, which I recommend everyone has. Yeah, everything we do is orange. You can see the books back there.
Yes.
Recently, one of my friends told me that orange isn't really my color, and I said, too late. I'm all in on orange.
My color is transparent and no one can see that. But anyway, please go on.
There you go. So in our case, we have ordered custom orange boxes that we send everything in. Like when I send you your book, you'll see it's orange. We wrap it in orange tissue paper. And I would, send a package of things that, relate to that person and that are interesting to them. And then also some type of a teaser on what you can do for them. Not my company is so fantastic and here's what we do. But you could include something that said, I've worked with a similar company. Like when I talked about my friend that sent the card, she said, I think that there's a whole lot more business out there that you're not getting. There are more customers that you can serve. And I have some ideas on how to do that. That was her message. And I think that can be a great message. And it was true.
And it's true. And B, if you're a head of sales, you're curious on how do I get more clients? How to get my people to get more clients? So brilliant.
Right. So, and you do have to back that up. You have to put some thought and care into that and say, okay, what are some of my ideas? But, a shock and awe package like that, and you can put some money into it. You could, you know, you can even make, I have you could go as far as making a mug like I've got with their picture on it if you wanted. And,
I once sent a fire extinguisher to someone because there was like between editorial and sales, there was like a major rift and he was putting out fires all the time, is what I heard. So I sent him a fire extinguisher. I hear you're putting out a lot of fires. Let us help.
so how did that work?
Got
I
a
bet you
meeting.
got a response.
Got a meeting.
Yep. Yep. So that attention is the first. And like I said, you're lucky if you're listening to this podcast because most people are not doing what you're doing. Most people aren't lifelong learners and looking for these, really creative ways to connect.
And going back to the orange, one, that's branding, which is nice. But more importantly, when you're talking to them, did you get my package? I'm not sure. It was in an orange box. Oh, yeah, I got that one. And so, yeah, it helps them anchor to that.
Connect. Right.
So we get that meeting and we move forward. That first face-to-face meeting, are there any critical things we need to know on that first meeting that we need to accomplish?
Well, you need to really be learning about what their problem is and some idea of how you can, solve it. Not spilling all over, not throwing up on them, as they say, but, letting them know that you already have done your homework and that you've studied them and you know something about them, discerning their problems, and then having an idea of how you can solve them. And a great way to do that is to talk about other companies like them who have had that similar problem and who you've helped and the results.
Absolutely. So one of the things you said a couple of times in different ways is humans have two needs. One of them is to be an individual. I want to be me and I want you to notice I'm me. But the second one, which is just as big, is to be part of a tribe. Because when we came out of the caves, survival depended on being in the tribe. And if you got shunned from the tribe, you were dead. And so the first thing you said was, research the person you're about to visit and figure out which school they went to. Not because they went to that school, who cares? But it's like, oh, my nephew went to the same school, which is like, who gives a shit that your nephew went? But it's enough for that person to go, oh, really? As long as you can find one form of connection, you do that.
Right. Exactly. Good point. Yes.
And then the same thing when you're in a meeting with them and you're basically getting them to share what's happening for them. And you say, I helped a client like this, where you're saying, oh, there's somebody else out there in your tribe who runs a business who's having the same thing. I help them. And they go, oh, part of the tribe, and you help them, you can help me too. Yeah. So that need to connect through the tribe is really important.
I believe so. And every sales situation is different, but I've always dealt with B2B, and then you're creating a relationship that goes on. So you're making the first sale, and it might have to be something small. Along the way, you're building trust, and that is critical, and something that some salespeople aren't great at, and that is following up. Every time you have a contact, when should I follow up is a good answer. And you put that on your calendar, and darn it, you got to do that, right?
Here's a couple of reasons why you should do that. Number one, for all the reasons you're about to say, which is, hey, that's how the sale gets done. Is not from the first meeting, it's the follow-up. So more importantly, this human being is going to leave this company and they're going to go to another company. And if you've been following up and staying connected, as soon as they get to the new company, they're going to call you and say, oh my God, we need this thing here as well. And if you're not following up, then it's just like they've forgotten you. So you've built the relationship, maintain the relationship.
Exactly. And, the salesperson, you as the salesperson are a huge part of what they're buying, because a lot of times products and services, one has this advantage, another one has this advantage, when you put it all together. What's that?
They're all interchangeable, plus or minus.
Yeah.
It's the human being that they connected with makes a difference.
Something is probably good enough. It may be, a little more expensive, or the lead time is, shorter, or whatever your advantages are. So having a relationship with someone who trusts you and knows, I don't have to worry about all this stuff. I am being taken care of. In the book, I talk about a woman named Leslie who sold IT products. And they ended up paying more for the products, but they said, oh, we buy Leslie. because we get a white glove service. And then Leslie leaves, they go with her. So having that relationship and the trust, I mean, it is sometimes hard to keep, on top of all your follow-ups, but that is huge.
So, Kate, a few quick questions before we part company today. Number one, what makes you happy? What makes Kay happy in her life?
Well, I really do enjoy serving people. I mean, going down the ski slope on a beautiful day it makes me happy too. Being with my family. I have a daughter who just turned 30 the other day. Love of my life. My husband, he's okay too. But I tell you, I have, I'm at the point where I have friends who can't wait to retire. And most of them have had really intense desk jobs for 30 years. But I've always had this freedom to, just design my own life. And I just wrote this book. It came out in May, and I'm so excited about it. Really, what makes me happy is last night I went to dinner with some clients, and he said, I really liked how you talked about the moose and relating it to Macy's, because I worked at Macy's, and I said, okay, here's how we would pick out our moose at Macy's. You have to read the book to find out, but I just love it when people say that really clicked with me. That really helped. We've made a lot of changes that have helped us make more sales and have more success. So honestly, yes, there's nothing better. And making the right sale. I mean, I literally sometimes feel that adrenaline jolt when someone calls and says, yes, we want to do the deal. I mean, you can't deny it's a high. Salespeople love that. And when it's really the right kind of sale, it's awesome.
Brilliant. What's one piece of advice you'd give someone that they could use today to be more productive, more successful, happier, sleep better, ski better?
Well, I have to pick one of those. Okay, exercise. That's number one, although I don't always do it myself. But I would recommend that anybody watching, call one of your current customers, one of your really happy customers, and say, will you do me a favor and just tell me in your own words why you buy? Because they know the pluses and minuses of your product or service. They know the whole picture, and yet they have decided to work with you. So
they know why they buy. And that's what we need to know. So that's totally brilliant. And more importantly, they tell you in their language, their articulation of what they're saying will resonate with people like them as opposed to how we articulate.
Right, exactly.
One thing I'd add to change that or add to it is get someone you trust to do it and not you. Because when you do it, they tell you they've got a relationship. And
what you want to hear, kind of.
Or you've got a relationship, and if you get like one of your buddies to call, they're like, oh my God, the reason we love, because they may not be as gushing to you on what the value is, but to one of your homies, they'll be like, oh my God, the reason I buy is da 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 da. And you'll get a more truthful answer and brilliant advice. Okay,
that's a great idea, a great twist.
I told you I was smarter than I looked, but you did not believe me.
I think I did.
So Kay, here's one last silly question. I used to ask this when I first started the podcast, so I'm thinking of bringing it back. Who is your favorite superhero and why?
I just will say the first one that comes to mind is Wonder Woman.
Nice. And why did you like her?
Well, I have to admit there's a connection.
Oh, nice.
But she was very tall. And so some of her stunt people were men. And back in my husband, he calls them his wilderness years, he was briefly a stunt man, and he doubled for Wonder Woman.
Holy cow, that is so amazing. Which Wonder Woman did he double for?
Linda Carter.
Oh, the original. Very
Linda Carter. And I just always really liked her. And, she's just, superhero. And
can you send me a picture of your husband in hot pants? We got to see this. Kate, thank you so much for being on the program. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Umar.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.